Google have just announced their Pixel 10 Pro Fold. It's a mouthful. But how does it stack up to the Galaxy Z Fold 7? Welcome back to ZaidiEsTech, you're here with Zahid. And with Pixel's announcement coming out about the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, still a mouthful, made me think, what have they actually done to compete with the Galaxy Z Fold 7? The more I looked into it, the more I realized, well, there's not a lot that actually competes with this. And the Pixel 10 Pro Fold doesn't seem like Google have really tried. Let's show you why. The first and probably most obvious one is the build. The Pixel 10 Pro Fold is thicker and heavier. Galaxy Z Fold 7, as we know in our measurements, has turned out to be the thinnest foldable on the market. No disputing that, the measurements tell their own story. 8.9mm thin when closed, 4.2mm thin when open, and it only weighs 215g in the hand, making it pretty much a normal slab phone when you've got it and using it. The Pixel 10 Pro Fold is 10.8mm thick when it's closed, which is actually thicker than the Galaxy Z Fold Special Edition. You can see how much thinner the Fold 7 is over the Special Edition. And it's actually 20g heavier than this. It comes in at 258g, which is heavier than the Galaxy Z Fold 5 from 2 years ago. Quite crazy, really, when you think that in a year where Samsung had to make moves with their foldable to really press ahead and show people the form factor, Google seems to not have to do that. And they haven't really made any advancements in making the foldable feel like a normal phone. Fold 7 absolutely has. With that, Samsung have got, and this is point number 2 for me, I would say the better cover display. Not just in specs, because on paper you've got a better refresh rate here when it comes to the 1 to 120 Hz, which enables the always-on display that you see here. But it's also the fact that it's actually narrower. So whilst the aspect ratio isn't as natural as the pixels, I think that's 20:9 versus 21:9 here. What I would say is the pixels is about 4mm wider this way. And when you see the Pixel 10 Pro Fold in the corners, you've got this really big, hideous sort of bezel at the top here. It just doesn't look good. Whereas this looks uniformed and clean and really nice aesthetically. Much prefer this. It's slightly bigger, 6.5 versus 6.4, but that's just because it's diagonal. The Pixel is actually bigger this way, which I would think makes it actually a little bit harder to hold, especially being thicker and also heavier. You're holding way more phone and not getting much more benefit out of it. Whole point of a foldable for the longest time is to have this more one-handed, comfortable typing experience, and using experience on the front here. And I just don't think the Pixel 10 Pro Fold will be able to give you that because of the fact it's going to be a lot wider, and really with the extra bezels as well, not giving you much more usable space. That doesn't necessarily translate to a bigger inner display. The Pixel and the Fold 7 both have an 8-inch inner display, but their aspect ratio is different. Again, the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is kind of a little bit shorter, but again, a little bit wider. So again, it doesn't really give you the best, probably I would say productivity and multitasking experience because of the fact that it's so much wider on the front. The two halves of the display, I would say, are too thick and maybe too big, which means that I would, for me, much prefer the way this is because you get two pretty much full-size smartphone apps next to each other in a very comfortable one-handed usage situation. Much prefer this over what the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is. And the next one is to do with the cameras. For the longest time, Samsung copped it when they made their foldable because they reduced the camera experience. Again, for some reason, Google doesn't seem to cop that same level of heat. Because the camera experience on the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is far removed from what the Pixel 10 Pro XL is. And that's fine. Foldable isn't meant to be the camera-centric phone. But the main camera and the ultra-wide camera are nowhere near the main camera and the ultra-wide camera here. Just does not hold a candle to it. The Pixel 10 Pro Fold has a very weakened ultra-wide and a very weakened main camera. The main camera here is the same camera that's on the S25 Ultra, Samsung's flagship experience. And the ultra-wide here has macro capabilities. I don't think the Pixel 10 Pro Fold is advertising that it does have that. The only point I would give to the Fold here, the Pixel one, is the telephoto. Having a 5x telephoto versus this 3x one here is definitely better. But I wouldn't say it's an overall better experience. The Samsung here just provides you better overall hardware thanks to these other two cameras. And it's also got 8K video recording, whereas Google haven't advertised that at all on the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. Next is the processor. The processing features on here, it's obviously just going to be better because you've got the 8 Elite for Galaxy versus the Tensor G5. And I don't know why Google do this. They severely hamper their performance of their phones through their processor. Day-to-day stuff, you're probably not going to notice it. You will absolutely not see an issue between the Pixel and the Fold 7 here with how you open up apps, how you interact with the UI. None of that will change in terms of fluidness. Where you will start to see a difference is things like gaming, but also performance things. So if you're doing like lots of video exporting, if you're doing lots of AI stuff that's on device processing, the Pixel 10 Pro Fold just isn't going to do as well because it just doesn't have the grunt underneath the hood to manage it the same way the Z Fold 7 does. The next one, number 6, is to do with the ecosystem. Now, tricky one, because obviously Google and Android can link with Samsung's ecosystem just fine. But the native Samsung stuff, it's just all links together, things to do with like smart things. It's just better native on a Samsung versus having to pair it to a Pixel. Plus Samsung DeX. Now, I do know of developer options for Android 16 and they've got a desktop mode in there that apparently runs pretty well. But again, it's not a native solution yet. Samsung with DeX has built it out over years to the point where not only do you have cable DeX where you can plug it into monitors, but you also got wireless DeX. Can wirelessly cast DeX to a TV or compatible monitor. Just for me, it seems like the Samsung ecosystem is just much more sort of fleshed out with their own products. Google is getting there. I would give it to them. Google is building up this product portfolio around their Pixel phones, but it's just not quite there yet. The good thing is anything that kind of works on a Pixel ends up working on a Samsung anyway. So you're going to pretty much get all the Pixel stuff coming to Samsung at one point because it's an Android ecosystem. It all sort of links together. And that brings me to my last point about AI. Galaxy AI is strong, and the great thing is Samsung and Google have this really big partnership where they link a lot of Google's Gemini services to Samsung's services. So you don't even necessarily need to have a Pixel phone to get the best of what the Pixel and Gemini stuff has. You can access it here because Samsung and Google are working so closely together because let's face it, Samsung is the face of Android. I would say that if you're thinking about a foldable and you're not sure which way to go, apart from obviously the hardware stuff, if you think that Google has the software edge with the Pixel, that might be the case for some AI features for a period of time. But because Android is such an open platform, that eventually is going to make its way here. So I wouldn't be too worried about jumping out and getting a Pixel just to get a software feature because eventually it's going to come to a Samsung via Android updates because they work so closely with Google. So look, you can judge these lists pretty harshly if you want. You can say I'm just shilling for Samsung and we're a Samsung fan channel. We're going to be talking about why we think Samsung is better because we genuinely believe so. Google obviously has some advantages. It's got a bigger battery. We know that. It's got that 5 times telephoto camera versus this 3 times 1. There's going to be some advantages there. The other thing to mention about the Pixel 10 Pro Fold, still a mouthful, is the obvious IP68 water and dust resistance. Samsung is still stuck with IP48. So it makes Pixel Fold the first one with IP68. I wouldn't be too worried about that though. In all the tests, especially with Jerry-Rig Everything, Zach, he showcased that this holds up with dust just fine. And foldables, you still got to be careful around that stuff anyway. Nice that Google have led the way with that though. So I'll give them that. The IP68 is a good peace of mind number to have on paper. And that's an advantage that it does have over the Fold 7. But it has to be thicker and heavier to do that. And no S Pen. Obviously this doesn't have it either. But you think if it was thicker, just put a layer of support in for a pen. Why not? But no, it doesn't have it. But on the overall hardware front, and especially with the software front as well, I think the Fold 7 deserves your foldable money versus the Pixel 10 Pro Fold. It's just my biased opinion. You can say that if you want. Hit subscribe to ZaidiEsTech. If you're looking for more information on Samsung, Google, Apple and other tech products. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for watching. Take care.